looking at the days and times that we're living in right now, how are we all feeling about being authentic and being true to ourselves? There's so much change in the world, not just in this country, but globally, that's really started to impact everyone as we go through it. And I guess the greatest challenge is how can you find your authentic self, your authentic voice, and be true to that? And that's what we're going to focus in on this episode today is really finding who you are internally and being able to put that out to the world, stand tall, be proud, and truly show your true colors, what you're all about, because that is the true pathway to what I feel is going to bring you the most fulfilling life. Got a wonderful group with me here today, Chris, Erica, and Vince. So we're going to dive into it. Let's get started. So, Vince, I'm going to come to you first with that question. When you think of authenticity, what is the most important pieces of it for you when someone brings that word up?
You know, for me, it comes down to my values. And when I think about all the turmoil, whether it's politically or in my life or whatnot, it's especially when it has to pertain to where I put my time. So if I'm putting my time with my family or in work, it's that alignment of my values. And am I doing things that make me feel good about myself, about the impact I have in the world? And so authenticity for me shows up that way. I mean, I've been in jobs before, I've been in relationships before where I'm doing it, I'm being in it, I'm going through the motions, yet it doesn't feel authentic. Uh, Friendships, same thing. It's like it just doesn't feel like this isn't an authentic relationship, and I think that's really the big thing. And it wasn't until much later on for me and figuring out what are my values, like how all these things. If you look at you do treasure mapping, or you do vision boards, or you do all these other kind of exercises are great because for me at least, they have given me an assessment. Like I remember I was at this one exercise and there must have been 100 different terms on this. And, everything you can imagine, describing different things about oneself. And the facilitator had us pick, I think it was like 12 or 15 of them. And then he had us, converse that through and talk that through and say the words to a partner, and then the partner reciprocated. It's like, okay, like which of these words really felt authentic? And then the facilitator said, okay, now you're going to drop it down to 10. So you cut out 5, and you do the same exercise, and then you drop down another 5, and all you're doing is you're whittling it down. Like, what is it, like, you're in my beingness that just kind of like resonates that those values. And then here I am walking away with 5 out of all these ones that I thought were important to me, because again, it's not like they're not important. They just, like, if you could distill it down. And then now I had this list, and I remember I was sharing with my daughter and her boyfriend, and it was really fascinating to hear, because it's almost like I wouldn't say a personality test or something. It's like, what are your values? And your values will change over time too. So I thought that was a really good exercise.
I could not agree more. And that part about your values changing, you have to revisit it every so often, and which I think is an important piece of it too. So, Erica, I'll ask you the same question. When someone brings up talking about authenticity or being authentic, what does that mean? Or how does that resonate with you?
For me, being authentic is just trying to be the opposite of fake, just digging into who you are at your essence and not being afraid to be that person and to show up as that person. I think lots of times we try to hide who we are out of fear, and we just show people what we think needs to be shown at that particular time. And so people on the outside, we just see different images or different shields that everybody holds up, but nobody's really being themselves. So when it comes to being authentic, it's really just not being afraid, allowing yourself to muster up the courage to really show who you are. And I think a part of that is also our responsibility to put ourselves in safe places where we can do that. So that's what authenticity is to me.
I completely agree with that. And that's a great assessment about the fear factors and fear pieces of it. And we feel like we have to put up a facade, essentially. And that's what we put out to the world. And getting beyond that, I think, is where you find the true gold in your life and are able to really move forward. Chris, what are your thoughts? Authenticity, when someone brings that up and says, hey, I'm being authentic, or I'm trying to figure out what authenticity means for me. What are your thoughts? What would you share in that situation?
One thing is, I think in each obviously each situation you deal with on a daily basis is unique and unto itself. And the thing that I think that I'm learning as I move forward in my life is I've recommitted to authenticity, and I think that that is cloaked in a power of choice. I think if you emphasize the authenticity being a conscious choice, and you choose to honor your true self, even when it's uncomfortable. And I think a lot of times you're going to, those two are going to intersect. You know what I mean? Because I have a saying, you know, sometimes what's right doesn't feel right, but it doesn't make it any less right. And I think some people, when I say that, sometimes people they look and I'm like, what is that? What? It's so true because, and we all have children, so I've had to have that conversation with my kids, like, hey, what you're doing, you validate the validation part of it is a huge part of it to begin with. You validate that piece where, oh, you're absolutely doing the right thing, but I can understand why it's uncomfortable because it's going against the grain of what most people want what the consensus is or what folks want to do. And it's always, and a lot of times what you're talking about is least path of resistance. uh, and that's not that is 9 times out of 10 that's not the way to go. You're gonna have to, in the spaces in the rooms that all of us are operating in and out of, we have to be agents of change. I've very much, that's been my, I don't want to call it my buzzword, but that's been kind of my rally cry for the last year and change, that I'm an agent of change. And it is very uncomfortable sitting in that seat on most days. Some days it's super pleasant and everything goes smooth, but on a lot of days, you've got to be that voice of reason. You've got to be that person that calls it out. Hey, did you guys think about this? Or did you think about that? Or, this is going to have this effect, or this is going to have that effect. And more importantly, you should be really committed in this authenticity to you, you know, and that's the toughest thing I think in society today, is us saying, hey, I'm not trying to hurt you, but this is what my value system says I need to do. And it depends on the group of people you're dealing with. I think in this particular company, I think we're going to probably, in a lot of instances, go the same direction, but that doesn't necessarily, that's not the formula all the time. So you have to be prepared for that. I think, Brian, you and I were talking the other yesterday or the day before, and I when I saw you guys on Thursday, and I said, yeah, I did. I seemed to be a little distracted. And you said, yeah, you did. And I said, well, I had some stuff that I'm processing, but in the meantime, I'm learning how to kind of multitask a little bit. So I'm actually learning even those, because my brains were in total, I mean, I don't even know where they were, but I managed to come and be a part of something that I probably needed to be a part of, just to kind of keep me on track, so to speak, which is sometimes what we do. Because the old me would be like, the house is on fire, everything's, batten down the hatches. I can't get with you guys. Well, the new me says, I probably need to get a little bit of what they got today, just, and we never really discussed what was going on with me the other night. But the reality was, you gave the support that you guys gave me was through rising above that and keeping it moving forward. And at the end of the day, when I got home, because Vinny's like, "You're gonna come," and I'm like, "I don't want to come." I'm all sweaty and stuff like that because it was in my gym stuff. I allowed myself to be a part of that. I allowed myself to say, Chris, what you got going, you can table it for a little while. Let's go over here and rebuild a little bit, re-strengthen. and just, reset the foundation so you can deal with these things that you've got in your life that you're going to have to deal with over the next couple of days. And that was the other thing I realized Thursday is what was going on was probably not going to even have a chance of fixing itself over a course of a number of days. So I needed to really kind of say, slow down. This thing didn't get broke overnight. It is not going to get fixed overnight. Let's live my life. Let's live my life and figure out how to get through this particular challenge, because the data says that it always turns itself around. It always does, other than death. As long as it's not death or some terminal illness, then there is a correction mode that is coming. So 100%. I have to be prepared to be that agent of change.
Yes. Yeah. A great transition, because one of the things I want to talk about next, it fits right into this. I was just watching a different podcast the other day, and the Diary of a CEO, and he was asking this question of his panel about what are some of the things that they feel really need to be focused on more in our global world, not just America, but our global world, that are not getting enough attention. And one of the things the guy brought up, he said loneliness, right? And loneliness and vulnerability and all of that, as well as your authenticity, I think are all linked. Because as Erica brought up a few minutes ago, you're putting out this facade that you feel like the world wants to see. And Chris, you were just talking about the old you would, go dig a hole in the ground, stick your head in it, and be all rattled and not connect with other people. And understanding that being authentic is how you break free from things like that loneliness. Because if you're showing the world who you think they want you to be, you're not being authentic to yourself. So there's a void, there's a disconnect there. And I think that plays into your mental health, your mental capacity. I also feel that, that's something that plays into just the quality of your relationships that you have across the board. And a really, really important thing to, I think, really get in touch with that for yourself and be true to yourself from that standpoint. What do you guys think about that when we think about the authenticity and the link to what we're seeing today with this loneliness epidemic? Vince, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a real thing. I remember reading some data across the world, especially in Japan. There's a whole terminology for, especially men who are recluses, and it was really interesting to see from a cultural context, because culture is everything, and why all of these men in like from 20s till I think like 50s or 60s, who just all they do is just stay inside and stay indoors and be by themselves. And when you think about the birth and death rate, when you think about all these macroeconomic factors that then lead on to just general happiness, and then you think about countries like Bhutan, which rank happiness like the gross national happiness or whatever it is, and you kind of wonder, it's like, well, why is it that even for me, there's a statistic that men in their 40s, I remember I was just getting into my 40s, it's like they're lonely, they feel disconnected, they don't have as many true friends and authentic relationships. I'm like, yeah, I'm lonely, and that the thing about it was I wanted connection. And it's so important to feel that one belongs, that I belong. It's so important to feel that I have, it's always one of those questions. It's like, if if the proverbial, stuff is hitting the fan, do you have people that you can call that will drop everything and be there for you? And then the other question is, are you that person yourself? Do you also do that? Because it's a two-way street. If you're not doing that, then why would you expect others to do it for you? So it's a hard look to really look at one's awareness of how they're showing up in life. Of course, for myself, how am I showing up? What is my integrity? What is my word? Am I keeping my word? Am I completing my goals? And then how am I supporting others? And so I find myself now more than ever asking others, friends, like, how can I support you? You know, what is it that you are going through that you need, that I can support you with in kind of this more win-win scenario versus a, zero-sum game.
Mhm. Vincent, it's interesting you bring that up because that was one of the notes I just made a moment ago, talking about the difference between being selfish and being selfless, right? And how
Yeah.
important that is in the realm of authenticity, but also just in the making those connections and having those true connections, right? And just asking the simple question of, how can I help? You know, and just laying that out there and letting whatever happens. And for whatever reason, I don't know if there's a fear that we have of oh, they're going to ask me to do something.
Mm.
That's actually the point. You need to have that two-way exchange, and that's what builds, I think, the link and the connection within those relationships, because how else are you going to elevate trust?
Hmm.
And you have to be obviously vulnerable and then show that you actually do care. You're not doing it to gain something or to take something away from them. You're just trying to be a supportive, engaged friend, and I think that has a lot of value.
Yeah, and then it comes down to the of course the age-old statement. You're unable to trust others until you trust yourself. So
Correct.
that's really important.
100%. Erica, what about you? What are your thoughts when we're talking about, this whole thing of loneliness and how your authentic self really plays into that?
I think even for people that know a lot of people and go a lot of places, there'll still be periods of experience periods of loneliness because, of course, depending on where they are, they're playing the role of who they're supposed to be at that period of time. But when they go home, they're able to be themselves, some of them. But oftentimes when people go home, they still don't feel safe to be themselves. So it does inspire a lot of loneliness, even for people that are extroverts and have a lot of external connections. When people start having kids, they make it all about their kids and doing this and that, and they let themselves go physically, mentally, spiritually, and socially. And everything is always just centered around children instead of making themselves um, a high priority, making their health a high priority, making their friendships and family relationships, besides with the kids, a high priority. So a lot of things when it comes to loneliness, it's our own fault in a sense because we create those situations to isolate ourselves, and we just make decisions that bit by bit, little by little, um, we start turning more into ourselves, and like you said, not being so friendly.
Absolutely. Thank you. Chris, same question to you. When we talk about that and loneliness and your authentic self, is there a bridge or is there a connection that you see with that? And if so, what does that connection look like?
Absolutely. I think that if I am at a stand, I'll just use me as the crash test dummy. Um, I'm at the point now where I've been in this I guess you call it journey of self discovery. I am really thinking about what my negotiables are, what my non negotiables are. Um, I mean, there are a multitude of people out there that are lonely, don't have someone, and but we're not. That doesn't mean that we're all looking for the same thing, and that is the trick that I find is, I'm single. I could, there are people I could go out and date, and I'm kind of, I don't know if I'm say actively looking for someone, but it's not far from my daily conscience of what I want. But you really screwed it up, Brian. Let's say that, right? Let me tell you that, Brian, when you got married and you did your whole edict and you talked about it, what drove you and the whole 9 yards was first and foremost, before I appreciate the hell out of you for calling your shot, for being as brave as you are to embark on what you've embarked on at our age. I don't say your age, at our age, to go down into those matrimonial waters again. But the thing that has never left my mind and I think about every freaking day, is you saying, she brought peace into my life. I have never, that is like the tape that just keeps playing in my head. And I'll be honest with you, that is now at the top of my list. That the next person that comes in my life, will they bring peace into my life? And if I can't with some certainty say that that person has that ability, then I don't want them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want them. I've been saying for years that in relationships, grown adult relationships, we spend more time like this than we do like this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to like you. I really need to like you. I need to be able to stand up and be able to look at you and say, I like you. You know what I mean? Love is a whole nother story all in itself. But that like piece is very important to me. And I'm not willing to sell out on it just for a warm body. I'm just not. So that drives me today. I mean, and I'd be less than honest if I didn't say I'm concerned if I can find it. I'm pretty sure I can, but right now it's very elusive. Maybe I need to not look for it. Maybe it will find me. I don't know yet. I'm in that process right now of processing a lot of my authentic self in this journey of self-discovery, figuring out what's really important. I know it's important, but what's really important? What do I gotta have versus what I can do without. So for me, it's invoking a lot of thought process. I'm not trying to overthink it, but I need it to be a point of emphasis because in my mind, as I say, we talk golf analogies. I'm on the back nine of my life, so there are certain things that I'm kind of halfway looking for, but I'm also trying to make sure that I've got my bases covered in the rest of my world, my professional life. Let's just say I find that person, being a provider, so to speak, and that doesn't mean I'm taking it all on, but just having as a responsible man in today's society that I got my bases covered. You know what I mean? So I'm coming to the trough, as they would like to say, with some water. Okay, so it's just interesting because what I'm finding now is I'm moving a little bit differently than I've moved in the past. I'm moving a little more cautiously, not to the point that I won't take risks, but I'm really keeping my eye on the prize, and I'm keeping my eye on what my my vision board, my goal board says that I need for that partner. For lack of a better term, I desperately seek.
Yep, agreed, 100%. So two things that I want to echo with that you hit on, Chris, and uh, the first one when you were just talking about in those relationships, you bring me peace, and I think that's a big piece of this whole pie we're talking about. But how can someone bring you peace when you're not being authentic with them or within the relationship? Because what they are probably trying to provide for you to give you peace is actually not who you actually are. So there's even a disconnect there that you have to look at. So truly opening yourself up and allowing them to be part of who you are, I think is a big part of that. And it goes back to Vince, and I have had this conversation before because when he brought it up about trust and learning to trust yourself enough to allow that exchange, that call it open wound, whatever you want to call it, but allow them in that close to you, see you as who you are and who you truly are. And that's where I think you can start to build that kind of synergy within those relationships, having that trust and allowing that person to be there for you, right next to you, and understanding who you truly are. The other part of it too, for me, and you, Chris, you were talking about, me taking that leap of faith and saying she brings me peace. But the one thing that I think is most interesting that we both agree on within our relationship is we allow each other to be who we are individually with no judgment. And she always says that very thing. She says, that's one of the things that I love about you is you're not trying to change me or make me any different. You accept me for who I am, what I am. And she does the same for me. But how can you get to that level of intimacy and connection if what you're showing is not your authentic self? So
Right.
is there a risk? Absolutely, 100%. That said, I want to transition to the next thing, and we already kind of brought that word up a lot, but it plays directly into this too, and that's vulnerability. And Vince, I'm going to come to you again and have you kind of build that link and why it's important to have the vulnerability and the trust within yourself to get to that level of being authentic.
You know, for me, it was recognizing that self-awareness of, what are some of the things that have been, I guess, taking space in my subconscious. And, this is where when I started doing the work on looking at what are those, past traumas, you can call them. And like one of the greats, Bessel van der Kolk, also talked about, like, there's big T's, big trauma, and there's little T's. And a lot of times those little T's are things that kind of show up, and we don't really recognize that it's driving us. It's literally like, moving us down this pathway. It's identifying who we are attracted to. It's identifying why we're attracted to this person. It's fascinating when, when I looked back on my life and started seeing, I was basically dating, or I was with the same person, just different name and different face. And it had me wonder, it's like, well, why is it that I'm attracting this? Because, in every relationship, it's never a, like, oh, well, they did. It's no. It's, I played a major role in this, because obviously I attracted this person and I wanted this relationship. And so, for me and vulnerability, it was me getting real with who I am, me getting real with what's holding me back, fear of rejection, fear of this, fear of that. And saying, okay, well, coming to grips with that and saying, that is okay. Not beating myself up. And then saying, is that how I want to live my life? Is that the kind of person that I want to be and the kind of person that I want to attract? So when I am moving to become more of a secure individual, based on attachment theory, when I am looking at, who, Chris kind of mentioned this, I'm vibrating, I'm attracting this kind of energy into my life. And it's a really fascinating look for me now, where I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, the universe is bringing these people to me, both relationships and friendships, professional, in love, or whatever it is. And it's a nice kind of like pulse, like, what's my baseline? And then I'm like, okay, so what do I need to do differently to be vulnerable with myself, come to terms with that, forgive myself, my inner child, and then say, this is not serving me now. And then it's like, well, what do I need to be doing, being vulnerable, to then attract that? And I would say most of my relationships now, folks that are in my peripheral, I enjoy talking about being vulnerable. I enjoy talking about, what are some of the things, both good and, how we perceive bad, because bad's not bad. It's just what it is.
I agree with you 100% on that, and that makes perfect sense. Eric, I have two questions for you with vulnerability, and we're going to go with one now. We'll circle back to the other one later. But again, for you, from a woman's perspective, vulnerability kind of has maybe a different meaning sometimes, because women have to want to feel safe and they want to feel protected. So sometimes there is maybe this need to feel that there needs to be a shield. What are your thoughts, though, when you talk about vulnerability with the relationship to authenticity?
Well, it really, with vulnerability, you have to have somebody there who you really do feel, or you want to believe, has your best interest at heart. And we know that's not always the case. I think most women would love to be followers, would love to, for heterosexual women, have a man that's a leader and makes wise decisions, and not that he's always perfect, but at least tries, studies and comes up with a decision or a suggestion on big things, and who will give you the freedom to be yourself um, without judgment or trying to criticize or belittle. It's very difficult for women to find men like that, because a lot of times men aren't good to themselves and they're still listening to voices in their heads, putting them down. So a lot of people, in turn, uh, in relationships, put other people down. Women do the same, but just looking from a woman's standpoint and listening to women talk about it, it's very difficult for them to feel that they're with someone who they can follow, who will have their best interest at heart. I think for people that grew up in the homes, or even if your father wasn't in a home, if you have a good relationship with your father, he pretty much lets you know that you are everything in his world, and he'll move mountains and whatever he has to do to protect you and love you. And I think for women, we really want to feel that the person that we're going to be with has that same outlook.
Mm.
So then it comes to, how do you find a person who you can trust to love you like your father loved you, or protect you like your brothers and cousins would stand up and protect you, like with their lives, on their lives, they will stand by this. And
Mm.
so I think it's very difficult for a lot of women to feel vulnerable like that. And some of it also might be cultural. It might be easier for certain women from different cultures to feel that way. For white American women from the South, it might be different. For Asian women from other countries, not from the United States or from other countries, there might be um, a hint of vulnerability. But from what I've known from Asian women from not from the United States, there's a very deep strength that they have underneath, that a lot of times people who want to stereotype them don't understand they have. They
Mm.
are strong warriors, but that may not be. They may come off as more vulnerable and tender, but that's not necessarily who they are on the inside. And for Black women, African American women, it might be something totally different, because of some cultural, some historical things that we have experienced as a group. That I think all women, just across the board, heterosexual women, would love to be with or meet a man who is genuinely interested in her soul, in her physical health, um, mentally, just everything. If I think if a woman would meet someone truly like that, that that would be a unique experience. Not saying that it would work, but it would be something that she probably would say, "Wow, this person is different. This person is together." When I was coming out of a breakup, I have a cousin, and he would like introduce me, not introduce me like, "Hey, you date my cousin," but he would like,
Mm.
you know, next thing I would be at dinner and somebody be sitting right there, and then it just dawned on me that it wasn't so much that he was trying to just push people to me. It was so I could see that there are all these different types of guys, that
Mm.
there really are good guys, mature guys, got things going on for themselves, you know, who have good hearts, good purpose, that it wasn't just this type of guy out there. And I think for a lot of women, they want to believe it, but it's kind of like um, a unicorn, a pink
Mm.
unicorn. You hear about it, but are you ever going to see it? But,
Mm.
but to answer your question, women want to feel vulnerable, and they want heterosexual women want a man who can take care of them and that they can take care of. Because at the essence of it, no matter what kind of car she drives, house she lives in, degree she doesn't have, a woman wants to take care of somebody, wants to take care of a man. A heterosexual woman wants to take care of a man, and they want to be vulnerable. It's
Yep.
just, is it a man that can can show that she can be.
Absolutely. So thank you. And that's perfect answering that. So I'm going to do my follow-on question today, Eric, because I think this is very important for both sides, our female audience and who might be listening to your voice and what you're saying. But probably even more importantly is the next question I'm going to bring to you for the male side of this. And my question is this. We often hear men say that we're supposed to be strong. We're not supposed to show our emotions. And, vulnerability makes us look weak. As a woman, is that the way you feel most women actually judge men? Or what are your thoughts, and what do you hear within the discussions with your female friends? If a man shows up and he is being vulnerable and he's being open and he's showing his emotions, how do they typically respond to men that show up in that way?
If it's somebody healthy who's been raised or grew up in a healthy environment, it's fine. It's perfectly fine. Uh, for example, my dad was very a masculine man, manly man. You know, hang out with dudes and just a very gregarious man. And he'd send me flowers to work, even in my
Mm-hmm.
20s. Send me flowers if my day was not going so hot. I might have roses when I come back from lunch in my office. Uh, Take me out to dinner, sing to me, just all types of sweet things, right? And it didn't make him feminine at all. It made him thoughtful. So, yeah, if a man has feelings, if there's disappointment or if he feels sadness, I think it's fair to say, today I think I feel sadness. That's what it is. I need some time alone. Or if he wants to talk or wants to go do something, even if it's just go sit somewhere by the lake with peace and quiet, but just you be there, I think that's fair for a man to say, hey, I want to go out. Let's go out on the boat. Let's go out by the water. Let's go out to the golf course, get some balls or whatever. And, I really don't want to talk very much, but I just want to hang out. I think that's fair. I think women who are from a healthy background would say that is fine. I think if somebody comes from a background where people cuss, and it's amazing to me how many people come from backgrounds where people cuss and put people down and all that negative stuff, then as a man, you have to ask yourself, why do I hate myself so much that I'm letting myself be in a relationship? How did I get into the relationship in the first place with
Mm-hmm.
somebody that hates me?
Mm,
That's
excellent point.
but somebody that's healthy, I think you can.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's important because, again, there's always, we have to pound our chests and mano kind of thing. And not to say that masculine energy is important. But I think from an authenticity standpoint, if you have feelings, you have these emotions, you have these vulnerabilities, you have to wear those too, and be okay with wearing those things. And I think that's a really important message for men to hear, and understanding that a woman, there are some women who may judge you for that, but for the most part, and as you said, Erica, if they're healthy, they have a good background, they were raised in a certain way, they'll actually appreciate that more than anything else. I think that's important.
And you have to
Chris.
remember that I can only speak from a Christian standpoint. I don't know everybody else's Bibles, but you have to remember Saul had mental health problems. David had fear. He had depression. He wrote all those Psalms, and it seems like a third of them was about him running and being afraid. And then he's like, I'm not going to be afraid if you're here with me, which lets me know that you would feel afraid, that you have been feeling afraid. You just now mentioning it. Jesus Christ cried. Jesus Christ roared out. It's emotions. Like our heroes had feelings, and it's
Mhm.
documented. So if King David, who literally is a killer, if Solomon, if all these people, for this Noah, Adam, Joshua, all these people had Moses, all these people have all these issues. If they can have these issues and still be people's heroes, then why wouldn't we understand that it's okay for you to have feelings? So,
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Thank you for sharing that, because that does give some credence and some foundation to exactly what we're talking about. Chris, your turn. We talk about vulnerability and obviously how that ties to your authenticity. Um, what can you share as far as that goes?
I think I think my vulnerability and my authenticity are tied. They're tied together. They're joined at the hip. I mean, I just think that And this is something that it's been an ongoing exercise for me. Let's just say for the last 3-4 years that I've come in touch with this. What used to be a choice is now not a choice. I have to be authentic. I have been wrestling with this for a while, and it's becoming less of a wrestle now because it's more of a resignation that this is for me to have the life that I want to have, for me to be happy. Then I can't keep holding things down and holding things in because it's not the right time, or how will it land with people? You know what? It's going to land the way it's going to land. I'm finding now, I'm dealing with a personal situation right now, and I'm not going to get into the situation or the individual, but I'm dealing with something from my past. And I want to say it's a good thing because I've got good intentions behind it, but it is also an exercise in my life. It is an opportunity for me to grab, I don't know if I want to use the word reacquire, but it's an opportunity for me to potentially go back in time to move forward in time. So I got to go back a little bit to be able to move forward. And it requires me to be vulnerable. It is requiring me to take a risk because I'm having to share some thoughts and feelings, some emotions. And what I'm trying to learn in this process, you remember we talked about me being the hair on fire guy, right? I'm trying to be, and I hope you guys are noticing this in your dealings with me now, I'm trying to become more measured. And so because these thoughts are continuing, they're not stopping. They are very much a big part of my daily consciousness. And I'm trying to navigate it right now. And I'm trying to remain calm. I'm trying to remain objective. And it's not easy on certain days. It is a challenging piece of my life right now. I know that you guys know that I've been a little quiet lately. And that reason is it's not that I don't trust you guys. It's not that I don't want to share with you guys. I have come to the determination that some of this I have to work out on my own. You know what I mean? I got me into this spot. I got to figure out how to get me out of this spot. Or more importantly, how can I advance it? I don't want to get out of the spot. I want to see if we can advance the spot again. If we can rekindle it, if we can grow through it and from it. And it's a big dream and a big ask. I'll be honest with you. But I'm like, you know what? I only got one life. I don't get a chance. I don't get a do. There are do-overs, but we don't necessarily get them very often. And I'm really praying for a do-over right now because I really think I got so many more new tools and new capabilities and just newfound ways to handle situations. And more importantly, as a man, I say as a man, I talked a little bit earlier about being a good partner, right? I have looked at the data extensively, and I've come to the conclusion, and I came to this conclusion 6 to 9 months ago, that I haven't always been the greatest partner. I haven't always been, I said I was supporting you, but it was conditional. I supported you to my comfort level. That didn't necessarily match up with your comfort level and what you needed my partner needed at the particular time. And I found out that I more or less failed miserably. Now, I have that ability to grow, change, adjust, all those things that I didn't have the ability to do 20 years ago. So I'm kind of in the middle of an experiment. And I'm in the middle of an experiment because I want to be in that experiment. This is something that's driving me right now. And I don't know if I'm going to win. I don't know if I'm going to lose. I don't know how this thing is going to met out. But I know that I have to see it through to the end. I have to do that. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional thinking about it. But at the end of the day, I feel good about what I'm doing, even though there are pain points in this process. And it hurts sometimes. And sometimes I feel alone. We talked about the alone part. I feel alone sometimes. But that's probably when I reach out. That's probably when I do the things that, bring joy back into my process, or remind me that there is joy in my life. Remind me that I have good things going on. Remind me that I have great people in my life. But I'm telling you where I'm at, it's a little scary sometimes. But I'm not looking for anybody's sympathy. I'm not looking for that. I'm just not. I don't want you to feel. I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me. I don't want that. That's not what I'm looking for. I just know that sometimes it's tough, but I'm tough enough to handle it. I've discovered that about myself. That I got the chutzpah and the cojones to stay on this journey. And through this process, I'm learning how to say it with my chest, say what's on my mind, say how I feel, admit where I was wrong, and just try to move forward for whether it's this person or someone I don't even know about. But I am really committed to trying to make myself the best possible me that I can be. And hopefully someone will see that and recognize it and want to join forces with me.
Well, the beauty of that, Chris, is as we just talked about with this, is the vulnerability and you being able to connect with you. And Vince mentioned it earlier about how all of these things are being attracted to him within his universe right now. But it's coming because he is now opened himself up to allow it in, right? And being true to himself. And you're at that same place right now in your life, like getting connected with those feelings and those emotions and allowing that to be who you are. So you will start to bring those very same things into yourself, which is that's where the magic will happen. So those things will happen for you in the future.
And you know
So
what, Brian? I honestly thank you for saying that, but I honestly believe that.
yeah,
And the other part of this is having the courage. That's probably the biggest thing. Having the courage to do. I mean, I'm sitting here right now, and you guys have got me broken down, and I'm not ashamed. For the first time in my life, I'm not ashamed.
yeah.
This is who I am.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like it or not, this is who I am, and this is who I'm going to be. And those that know me well and recognize it is really not a weakness, it's a strength of mine. And just turning that around and understand, I honestly, in my heart of hearts, believe that some way, somehow, I'm going to win. I just, even when it's at its most, because my emotions just go up and down over the course of any given week. And when it goes down, it's really kind of ugly sometimes. But I just keep reminding myself that I believe I'm deserving of a win, which has not always been the case in my life where I felt like I deserved to win because I wasn't necessarily doing the right thing all the time. I am now trying to really dot my I's and cross my T's and really saying every step and movement that I'm making be from the heart or from a very strong ethical position. And like I said, I believe that it'll show through. I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual. So I pray every day. I was praying this morning when I woke up. I prayed last night before I got into bed. Um, but I think the victory is coming. I just need to be able to stay in the moments and stay true to the course and stay disciplined so I can receive those blessings because I think they're
That's true.
close.
Yep, could not agree more. Uh, and this is, interesting enough. The very last thing I really want to talk about when we're talking here about, your authentic self and being authentic is communication. And this is exactly what you're expressing right now. You are opening up that whole can to let the world see, and you're willing to communicate that out. So, Vince, I'm going to come to you with that when we're talking about being authentic. How does communication play into that? What levels of communication? Because we sometimes get stuck in these things of, well, can't they read my mind or just know what I want or know what I'm thinking or know what I'm feeling? I think we have some ownership in that piece of it too, is what we communicate and how we communicate really matters when we talk about authenticity. What are your thoughts on that?
I was reading this book, and it was talking about how at the end of the day, it all comes down to language. The language we use when we talk to ourselves. which is really big because the language we use when we talk to ourselves emulates what the language is when we talk to others, and the words we use plays a big role. Erica kind of brought this up in terms of like cussing, and it's so true. What are we willing, or how are we willing to communicate internally and externally is a great window into both vulnerability. Confidence is a big one too. What we're attracting, like attracts like, and then of course the other thing is boundaries. What are the boundaries we're putting on for ourselves? What are we willing to allow and say? And then of course, it's not to say I'm gonna excommunicado or not work with any of those or be with any of those other folks out there. It's just saying, hey, this is my values, this is what I believe, and I hope you can honor those. And if you're not able to, then that's okay. So it's really important. Like Chris made a point where in his progression he's going inward focus. He's pushing people. When I would say pushing people away, he's pulling himself out of like going out for support and all these other things and kind of going inward. And what I've learned more recently in that one is there's a tool called the growth chart. And when I'm inward focus, that's when all of these internal conversations, avoidance, thinking about I'm not good enough, thinking about all these other things. And I have to recognize when I'm being inward focus and when it's not serving me. And then there's another, the opposite of inward focus is outward focus. It's like, okay, well, if I can be focused on supporting others and helping others, and there's a term giver's gain, where I'm going out there and, and it's fascinating because just that mental mindset shift for me has been extremely valuable. It's ensuring that, hey, I have value, and I am being vulnerable and sharing my own experiences, not in a way where I'm saying to someone else, it's like, you should do this, or you would find more happiness and value if you did this, because then I'm I'm being selfish. I'm feeling like that I know all the answers and I have the right way, which is, of course, as we all know, is incorrect. So how I use the words and how I express that, speaking from the I am, is really important. So communication, I think, in going back to it, is king.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. Thanks for that, Vince. And it is true about not trying to communicate from a dictating standpoint, more of letting people, here's my experience. This is what I learned, and allowing them to hear that and apply that to their world, because everybody's journey is unique and it's different. We all have different experiences. So I think that's a key piece of it. Erica, what are your thoughts when you talk about communicating and whether that's internally or externally to others from an authentic place? What's important about that?
I think, and I've just really started practicing this recently, candidly, is allowing people to be themselves without attaching any type of wants or expectations towards it, letting other people be authentic and letting them be vulnerable, or at least making space for it. That if that's what they want to be, that's fine. If they don't, that's fine too, but not attaching judgments or demands on it. Really letting somebody else be authentic without having any requirements to be anything other than what they are. So if somebody is open hearted, let that person be. If somebody is kind, generous, accept them as that they're a combination. If somebody's a complete whore, that's who that person is. Don't try to change that person. Just let them be authentically who they are. And then from there, you get to decide on what role that person plays in your life. I think just making that space. And we communicated with words, but we also communicated with our actions, with the way we hold our hands, the way we look at them, just letting them know and providing that environment that they're comfortable to really reveal who they are. Because most people are hiding. So that's
Yeah,
up to us to give them the environment to where they feel safe.
the way they feel safe. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, that's very true. Giving them that space. That's a great way to look at it, is to use that word of just allowing and giving them that space to just be who they are. And it's that old thing like peeling an onion, you got to get down to those inner layers. But that only happens when you give it some time and some space and allow them to kind of adjust and get comfortable. And I think that really makes a big difference. And what you also mentioned there was communication and the different ways, which I think is of so much value, because all people seem to always want to wrap communication into the words, but communication comes across in so many other ways than just the words. It's body language, it's the actions we actually take. It's the whole eye roll as people talk about. Oh, I don't know about that, right? All of that sending messages that people gravitate to and latch on to. So we need to be aware of how we are communicating, not just verbally, but
Yeah.
across the board.
And I can't say how much, how often rather, men will come into my office and really, people would not believe that some of these men feel as badly as sometimes they do, but they'll come in and to the outside world, they'll look like they got all this going on, right? There's confidence or this, that. But they've been, their little spirits have been broken down to really, I'm referring to it as their little spirits. They little
Mm,
hopes, dreams, their feelings are hurt. They feel broken, like
mhm,
literally, like you wouldn't meet them and you wouldn't think that like this person's broken inside, but they are brokenhearted. I don't give a doggone how great or how happy they might look or where they're traveling and what all they're doing, but they are hurt.
mhm,
And it's hard for me to explain to women that no matter what this person might be looking like, that's not necessarily their experience on the inside.
exactly.
And it's, yeah, it's, and I'm not a psychologist. I'm a counselor of law, but I don't get all into the whys, but there's just so many reasons why guys feel broken or their emotions diminished or their hearts just not seen. And that I think increases, like we said earlier, that loneliness piece. And I don't really know. You can see it on YouTube, the way men and women talk about each other. It's just total, a lot of it's just nonsense. It's like people need each other. But the way, you have broken people that have the mic and they think that, and they had so many bad experiences that they think that you have to be this or that and do this or do that. And it goes back to what you guys say all the time. A lot of it is karma. A lot of the energy you give out. Eventually, if there's somebody that means you harm, they're going to get what the universe is going to give them.
Mhm.
But if you have but you don't, like, that's not really all you hear on like YouTube, what they call them, the manosphere or whatever. And then I guess there's the equivalent of women hosts that put down guys. Is I think we all could do better. I think the genders could do better. And the way when I'm listening to men and sometimes listening to the women, they want to. I just don't understand the disconnect.
Yeah, could not agree more with you. Thank you for sharing that. And it is true. There's so much division now between men and women and expectation, but a lot of it just comes back to twofold. The communication is what we're talking about now, and what you put out versus and what you put out one thing, but you expect to get something different back, and that's generally not how it works. Chris, what about you? When we talk about communication and vulnerability, what has been your way of you know being vulnerable, but also being authentic and being able to communicate that? I think going back to what Vince brought up, also having those boundaries, because I think that's important.
I had a couple of thoughts that ran through my head when Erica was talking about relationships and men and women and how they interact. And for me, what I've come to understand, learn, believe is that everybody's going through something. Everybody's in different phases of their own journeys. And I think the hardest part sometimes is to align those or see where the similarities are between the two. So in my particular case, I'm obviously on a journey. We've been on a journey together, you know what I mean, for a number of years. We all have. The person I'm talking about is also on a journey. It's not, I don't think it's as advanced as where I am. And it's something that I have to keep in mind. You know what I mean? Because I'm in this elevated stage of journey right now, and I'm actually pushing it. I'm forcing it. I'm literally somewhat in certain days kicking and screaming, trying to pull myself forward. But I have to remind myself that some of the people I deal with, this person I've been talking about, is not where I am. And what I desperately want to keep this communication going. I desperately want some growth out of this whole process, but I have to be patient about it. I have to be measured about it. And on certain days when it's chaotic in my head, these are the times it serves me the most, and I get the most amount of mileage when I stay silent, when I stay quiet. Before I would go in my own head and I'm starting to fire off, messaging or trying to communicate and stuff like that. And it's really, I found that I'm trying to get attention. I want attention. That's really what I want. And that as I've reviewed the data, as I've been saying that all day today, as I review the data, I look back on those tapes and I'm like, that couldn't have been too appealing. You know what I mean? It reeked of desperation. It didn't show any strength. It didn't show any discipline. And it says that I didn't care. The way I really broke it down is like, well, you say you care about me, but you're putting all this stuff on me. You know what I mean? And you're not taking into account what I may be going through or where I am in my journey, because I haven't taken the time to invest the time into seeing where they actually are. I'm making a lot of assumptions. And I've been really working on not making those assumptions anymore and really operating on back to what we're talking about, back on that in a more authentic way, in a more supportive way. Now, supporting people can be painful at times. We all know this. It just can be. It requires that you give up some of yourself to do it and really be strong in the foundation of who you are. I have found out more about myself in the last 6 months about my desires, my dreams, and who I am. And I am hell-bent on being a little bit better every day, which keeps in sync with my I got to trademark this, my whole progress story, my whole progress line. Progress isn't measured in distance, it's measured in progress. So I've been trying to live that on a daily basis, and it is very difficult at times. It's not improbable and it's not impossible, but it is really, really challenging at times. And I'm learning how to man up. I really am. I feel like I am. Let's put it like that. I feel like I'm starting to man up more. And when I do that, and I come to that realization, I feel so much better about who I am. I feel so much better about what my goals and objectives are. And I feel so much better about when the dots align, because they're going to align one day. They just are. But I feel like When that day happens, it'd be like all this that I went through, all this that I had to learn, the tough lessons, the whole 9 yards. I don't talk to, I don't know who's mentioned it earlier about how you talk to yourself. I am really been working on talking to myself with a lot more positivity behind it. Even when I make a mistake, Chris, you made a mistake. Don't live in it. Don't stay in it. Note it, jot it down, journal it, whatever you need to do. Learn from it and keep it moving. When I'm being objective, I'm very happy with who I am finally allowing myself to become. I am.
And it shows 100%. So we all see the change, no, without question.
Thank you.
So it's that time. We'll do a quick round of what I always say, final thoughts. So Vince, I'll come to you first. To our audience, what would be the final message you'd like to provide to them about authenticity and bringing forth your authentic self?
I often think about those old age kind of statements like be true to yourself, and whatnot. And I also think about how the majority of us, and myself included, this stuff wasn't really taught. We don't talk about values and being authentic and vulnerability. And what I'm excited about is I see a shift. Obviously, I see a shift in myself first and foremost. And because I'm seeing a shift in myself and being the most authentic person that I can be, 24/7, I definitely have a lot more happiness in my life. The term that seems to be coming around in my sphere is Zen. And that's great. I love it. And I want more of it. And, the thing about being authentic is, again, it's this is not stuff that you're not necessarily going to find. You're going to find the answers within you. However, what that means is going out and being vulnerable and talking about these things and finding a community that likes to talk about these things. And the majority of time, at least from my experience, that is not the community that I've surrounded myself with and grown up with. That most likely is a community that I have to go and find. And part of that is I have to be vulnerable with this, because the more of these individuals I find, it's like, wow, okay, so it was always there. I just wasn't allowing myself to experience that and connect with that and be comfortable with that. And finding that group is amazing, because the amount of growth that I've seen in a very short period of time has been tremendous. It's kind of like transformative is always the word that kind of keeps circulating around as well. And again, it's a journey. And when I stop comparing myself with what I thought my journey should be, especially when I stop comparing myself with the journey of others, where I feel like I should have been, accomplishments-wise, success-wise, how I define success, how I define wealth, that's really opened up a whole lot of other doors, which has been really amazing to see. Oh, okay, yeah, none of this is new. And I'm really glad I got to do this in my 40s. Would I wanted to do it in my 20s? Sure. Was I ready for it? Doesn't really matter.
Thanks for sharing that, Vince. That's some very good insight, and finding that community and that group of support is a very key component to it. Because, as you said, like minds makes such a difference when you're trying to grow and elevate yourself to the next level. Erica, what about you? Final thoughts. What would you like to leave our audience with when we talk about authenticity and trying to live your life as your most authentic self?
And trying to live your life as your most authentic self, make sure to leave room for other people to show up as their own authentic selves instead of what you want to impose upon them as your image of what they should be. If you want people to be open to you or to attract people who are open to who you genuinely are, on the inside, not when you're like on at work or on in other places, but when you're at home, when you're around friends and family. If you want to attract people who genuinely like you and care about you for who you are, you have to be open to letting other people be the same instead of who you want them to be or who you need them to be. Let them be, that's my advice.
Thank you. Very important. And you're so right. And that goes back to what you said earlier about leaving that space for them to be truly who they are. And that matters. And that'll allow you to also be truly who you are in that relationship as well. Chris, final thoughts for you today, sir. What would you like to share with the audience about authenticity?
Well, a couple things. First thing is you are what you eat.
Mm-hmm.
You get what you give. If you want people to show up for you, you have to show up for people. If you want people to give you grace, you have to give grace. If you're looking for people to give you some runway to land on, you've got to give some runway to land on. What I'm finding is everything that I want, I have to be prepared to give. Sometimes until it hurts. But I'm finding out that it has become less negotiable for me that I do this and that I behave like this, even though I don't know what the outcomes are. Somebody said something recently. We talk about being in love with the process and not necessarily the results. And I think America and this, our society is so stuck on the result, what the final score is, the tally, I win, you lose. We know from the rooms that givers give and givers receive. But allowing that whole thing to take over who your very being, your very existence is very risky. And if you can do it, it is the people that, the really high level people can see that. They understand it, that it resonates with them. And consequently, you're going to see that it's going to come back to you. Like I said, I have been doing so many things over this last 3 to 5 months that are just absolutely terrifying at different points for me. But I am, with each passing day, becoming more and more committed to it. I can actually visualize the outcome. And that's not what I'm in love with, because the process is where I'm trying to really get submerged into. But I think you also have to be able to visualize a desired outcome. You have to be able to do that, because if you don't, then I don't think you have a direction. You don't have and the direction may not be clear. It may not. It may be, a lot of this is muddy for me. Certain days it's very muddy, but I'm committed, and I just keep, when it gets muddy, I slow it down a little bit, and I proceed a little more cautiously, because I don't want to end up going around the wrong corner and end up getting my head taken off. But I just adjust how I move. When it's clear, then I pick up speed. When it's not so clear, slow it down, slow the cadence down a little bit. And I'm finding that starting to work. I'm finding I'm getting some happiness out of that. I'm getting some joy out of it. And more importantly, my foundation of what I believe is right gets reinforced. And that's important to me, especially in the days when it's really uncertain and I'm not sure, because we all have those days where you're like, I'm not sure what the hell I'm doing today. And that's the other part of it, just being honest about it. I don't know what I'm doing today. I have no clue. Sometimes I've found that I have to retreat every once in a while. I'm just like, I'm going to do absolutely nothing today. I just don't think I'm going to make any ground in my current state of mind. But I knew the mission was dangerous when I took it, but I took it no less. I think we're all going to win. I'm definitely looking forward to the victory down the road. And I appreciate every one of you for being here for me, with me on this journey, and the contributions that you make to my life. I hope that I equally make those contributions into your life.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that, Chris. And as you just said, it is a journey, and Vince mentioned that as well. Staying on task, staying on course as best you can. The twists and turns will come as they may. But as Chris also just mentioned, having a vision of where you're trying to get to, that's the pinnacle to try to stay focused to, because that'll get you through those rough days when you know what your target is. So trying to have those goals and objectives clearly defined and have some clarity makes a huge difference. Folks, this has been amazing. Thank you for your time this morning. We shared, I think, a lot of wisdom and knowledge that can help our audience achieve some clarity for themselves from a vulnerability standpoint, and also, more importantly, from a truly being authentic standpoint. So, again, thank you. And I just want to close by saying this to our audiences. Now is that time to go out, to live, love, and lead your best, most empowered, authentic life. Go make it happen. Until next time, everyone, take care. We'll talk to you soon. Bye now.